What's up, everybody? Matt McQueenie here with the Mix Minus podcast. Today was another eventful day for Apple out in California. They announced their newest lineup of products, which centered around the iPad. The iPad Air that came out last year, I purchased that one, as well as the iPad Mini with Retina display. The names are getting a little unwieldy now for Apple, but that one came out and that really changed the game. I mean, it's pretty much been ranked in many great tech sites the best tablet there is available on the market. The iPad Air is a fantastic device. It's the perfect size, just under 10 inches, right? Or is it 9 inches? I think 10 inches. Perfect screen use, very thin, very light. You get some nice covers for it, and it's like you're carrying around a tablet, and it's a great piece of equipment. And the best part with Apple is that they have a real marketplace, obviously in their App Store. We all see it with the iPhone and the iPad especially. In the tablet market, really nobody touches Apple. There are a lot of tablets from Android, whether you're looking at Samsung or the new Nexus tablet that's kind of a Google created device, and their newest what's it called? Their newest software. I think it's called. It's not Jelly Bean, right? I mean, they got these crazy names over at Google. I don't even get it, and that's why I've had a lot of trouble trying to go into the Google world and making some sense of it, because it's not something that really it's too confusing to me in many ways. But the iPad is the real deal tablet. Today at the event, Tim Cook, when he was speaking, he brought up the fact that there's almost 700,000 apps that are custom designed for the iPad, which is a big advantage over the competitors, as he said. When you know that there's that many people in the marketplace creating atop that platform, that's really a big key. Because really it's not so much what Apple has to do in these events. Look, they create the platform, they create the hardware, and they create kind of the rules of the road, and they try to get out of the way a little bit. A lot of the apps that Apple creates are not exactly winners, but that's okay, because having this marketplace, having this many people in the marketplace purchasing apps, downloading apps, many of them are free now, obviously. That's where a lot of the special aspects of the platform come to the fore. It's it's when the Evernotes of the world, it's when the Facebooks, it's when the Pockets and the Instapapers and the podcast apps and the video apps and the Netflix and the Amazon, and all these people bring their innovations into the iPad, and people will innovate on it when they know that there's a huge base of people using it. That really is a big key. As I said, I got a Nexus tablet, which is about a 7-inch tablet, which is very small. It's also got a very strange form factor. I think with the iPad you get used to kind of the 4x3 form factor. These are more in the 16x9, so they're much more akin to a cell phone. And I feel like I'm holding a big cell phone sometimes, and I don't know how to actually interact with it. I don't know whether I should have it in landscape or in portrait, because when it's in landscape it's weird because it's tall, and magazines and certain apps won't even make a landscape version, so you're forced into the portrait, which I never like. I do not like being forced in a tablet into a mode. I don't mind on the phone, because sometimes it makes a lot of sense with a phone when you have a form factor that keeps it in portrait mode, especially when the phones were smaller, as they were with the iPhone until last month, when they released the iPhone 6s, which I got. I got the iPhone 6, the regular one, and then the iPhone 6 Plus is obviously a 5.5-inch phone, so that's much bigger. But I don't mind it with that. But with a tablet, you gotta have it both ways. And that was a big issue with a lot of the magazines, like the Time Inc. magazines, such as Sports Illustrated. I think Time is still stuck in that. They originally released their apps and they allowed you to choose portrait or landscape. And then over time, they realized, I guess for budgetary reasons, we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep it in portrait, and you're going to have to deal with that. I don't like reading a tablet lengthwise. I don't like that. It's like made to be kind of held in the long end in your hands there, and to be read in a very landscape mode. That's what feels natural to me. And the fact that you're locked in, I remember the Daily. Remember that a couple of years ago? Rupert Murdoch tried to create a newspaper that was only for the iPad at first, and then it ultimately came to the iPhone, I believe, and then also to the it might have come to Android devices before it ultimately was taken down by market forces because it wasn't getting the money to the subscription money to make up for what was a very big staff that they built there. They brought in people from the Post and big writers from sports and different aspects, and they would have this. I believe it was once a day. It was released in the morning, and it was an iPad newspaper. Well, they had a thing where sometimes it's portrait, but then it would be like turn it sideways so you could see this graph this way. I don't like that. It's like too much thinking. You're trying to read content as it is, and that is a tough thing. And I noticed that with my Google tablet, there's I guess not the market for that, and maybe there's not the market for the 7-inch tablet there. Maybe they do have it in the bigger forms, in the 10-inch tablets, like the Samsung Galaxy, I believe, has one. But you're kind of stuck, and I didn't like reading a magazine that way. But it brings back to the fact that the iPad platform really provides such an amount of people coming to it that a lot of the developers really can make all the modes. They can use all the space on it and really take it to its utmost level, its best, its best representations. And the Apple developers and the people behind the actual platform provide the rules of the road and the best practices. So it really works out. But I don't really love the name, but it's an iPad Air 2, the new one, and they came out with an iPad Mini 3. It gets a little silly when you add the names. I kind of wish they came up with another word for Air, because Air was like a perfect name on its own. You start adding numbers and it feels like a bad sequel movie. Next thing you know, you're at Fast and the Furious 6. Like, hopefully we're not at a point where we get to iPad Air, 6. Just it would have been nice to come up with a different name, but they kind of got stuck there, especially with the iPad Mini 3. That's like really weird. But now they have such an amount of tablets when they were showing the picture at the event. And by the way, good job finally on Apple with the event streaming not being taken down by all the users. And maybe there were not as many people watching this one as the iPhone one, because the iPhone one was something people were really waiting for, because that was going to be a product that Apple had never brought forth before, the phablet, that 4.7-inch phone and the 5.5-inch phone. So I think there was much more demand for that. And there does seem to be a demand more for phones now. They said that, or many outlets have reported that the profit margins have gone down on the iPads, quarter over quarter over quarter. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I really love both devices. I love the phone and I love the tablet. And I did kind of an informal poll about a month ago on my Facebook page where the majority of people, pretty much everybody, said that they had both. So I don't understand this kind of story that the tablet is losing its sway. The other thing that doesn't make sense to me, I mean, look, sales are sales. They say what the truth is. When it's quarter over quarter, you're not making money on it and you're not selling as many. It's, the proof is in the pudding there. But the thing that doesn't make sense to me with tablets versus phones, many people have phone plans that lock you into a contract in a phone for 2 years, because basically you're paying a more moderate fee, whether that's $199, $299, or however much based on the storage you get for the phone, and then you pay off the rest of it over 2 years, and that gets baked into your phone plan. Really, because phones are about $500 to $700 in reality, for whatever reason. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they tell us. And so they allow you to purchase the phone carriers do this. They allow you to purchase the phone at a more moderate price, and again, pay it off over those 12 or 24 months. So you're really locked into that phone for that amount of time until you pay it off. Otherwise, you got to pay a big early termination fee. And that's something that has not made sense to me with the tablet drop-off, because with a tablet, you can basically pay, for a 16 gigabyte device, you can pay about $499, which is still a good chunk of money, but it's not a crazy amount. It's not $600 or $700 like an unsubsidized phone would be. And it allows you to get the newest technology every single year, really, if you want to. Because a lot of times also these different places will do kind of what they did with the cars a couple of years ago with the Cars for Clunkers, where you bring in your old car and then you can buy a new one, and you get a great cashback offer for your old car, and it helps you buy a new one. Well, they do that a lot with the tablets. It's almost like cash for clunker tablets, and they're not clunkers. They're, the tablets are perfectly fine. The iPad Air I have right now is still Retina display. Um, it's still just fast enough for me, even in the new iOS 8. It's perfectly fine for me. But the new one is a lot faster. It's 18% thinner. It's this much, faster. It's got an A8X chip, whatever that means. I don't know this stuff much, but I know it does speed up the processing, and it does a lot better. I'm still okay with iOS 8 though on my tablet. Totally fine. It works fine. Same thing with my iPad mini with Retina display. They're both ostensibly the same device, just at a different form factor. But I've been kind of playing around with the idea of, do I get a new one? Do I turn in my iPad Air 16 gig and try to get an iPad Air new one, or an iPad Air 2, again, the name I don't like? Do I turn both my iPad mini and my iPad Air in and get money back, and that helps me subsidize the price of one new one? You just kind of play with these things, and right now in my mind I'm telling myself it doesn't look like you need to upgrade at this point. The differences are not stark enough where there's an unmet need that you have to fill, that there's some killer application that's lost by having the old one. I don't see it yet. They said that the iPad Air was basically pencil thin or thinner than a pencil. Well, in the Apple event, they did this cool little teaser video where they shaved a pencil basically in half, and they're saying that's pretty much how thin the new iPad Air is. So it really is thin, and that's what many people say. They also come with the Touch ID. I never thought that would be a very big idea, but again, I got the iPhone 6, which I love, and maybe in my mind, as you try to think these things through, you say, well, I got the new phone, so I have a new technology. Maybe that satiates my need to not have to get that in the tablet experience, and I'm fine. But the one thing I do find is this Touch ID is so cool. So you basically hold down the home button, and then after about less than a second, your phone just turns on. It's a pretty awesome thing. But what you do notice is that when you go to your iPad, your older iPad, the iPad Air and the iPad mini with Retina in my case, you're holding down that home button expecting it to open. So it is strange the way you get, we look at our phones, 100 times a day? So we're really, even using that for 5 days, I'm completely conditioned to opening it. So you do miss that. But what you look for, as I brought the Cash for Clunkers thing up, is somebody always comes up with a deal. I didn't think I needed a new iPad last year. I had the iPad third generation, I think, 16 gig third generation. I've only gotten Wi-Fi iPads ever since the first one. I don't see a need to get that ever, especially if you think you're going to upgrade, a year later or even a year and a half, 2 years later to the newest one. Why go all out for cellular service? One, it adds $130 to the price of a base Wi-Fi only iPad. Two, you can use your phone, well, at least I can. I can use my phone as a hotspot. And three, there's a part of me that likes just when I'm in Wi-Fi, I'm connected. But the majority of my iPad experience is downloaded content, or it's video that's streaming in Wi-Fi. I wouldn't stream video outside of Wi-Fi anyway because of the data caps and things like that. So the majority of my iPad stuff when I'm outside of Wi-Fi is downloaded content, and that's what I do a lot with my iPad. It's magazines, it's newspapers, it's sometimes I'll hit my Kindle in there, even though I do have a Kindle as well. And that's another big thing actually with the iPad Air 2, is they say that it's 56% better, reduces reflections by 56%, so anti-reflective coating. Anybody who takes a tablet out into the sunlight knows that it's basically a useless brick at that point. And then you look to the right or the left of you and you see the person on the Kindle completely enjoying their day reading. That's where the Kindle kind of has a one-up on you with that e-ink, is that you are not affected by sunlight. The iPad is completely affected by sunlight. Anybody who's tried to read at the beach with an iPad, it's miserable. You're trying to hide under certain umbrellas, you're trying to aim it so that the sun hits it in a certain way and you can read it somehow. It's pretty brutal. Again, hashtag first world problems on brutal, but it's not a good thing. So if there is a promise there with the reflection thing, then that is a good jump. But again, I don't see a big deal jumping ahead into the iPad Air 2 from where I am. Plus, you think about the fact you bought the covers. I got that leather case cover for my iPad Mini. What was that at the time when you bought it? It's $60, $70. And then I got, when I had the iPad Air, I got the just the cover one, not the leather one that covers everything, and that's like $40. And then a couple months ago, I was in Staples, saw that for the iPad Air they had the same leather one I have for my iPad Mini, and with different coupons and clearance things, I got that for about $20-$30. So I have all these cases, and from everything I've read, the cases will not transfer over to the new ones. The iPad Mini cases might transfer, I think, actually, but with the form factor of the newer iPad Air being so much thinner, apparently the cases will not work for that. But again, the Touch ID is big. They have a great camera apparently, 8-megapixel iSight camera, 1080p HD video, there's time-lapse stuff. I'm not big on that stuff. Again, I almost could live with my iPad having the functionality of the first generation iPad, which did not have video or the ability to take camera stuff. I really use it in the morning and at night and during the day, a little bit at work, but mostly as a media consumption device. That's where I read all my magazines, I get all my subscriptions through there, and I really enjoy it that way. I like always knowing you can go to a device and it'll have everything you need to read at any time, and the majority of it is downloaded. So I don't use it as a big major device to be connected. That's for my phone. The phone does that enough, especially when you look at a 4.7-inch phone or a 5.5-inch phone. And many people said that, at least initially from what's come out with this iPad event, that the iPad Mini 3 was sort of given short shrift. I mean, I can't tell you exactly what the percentage was, but it really did feel as though the iPad Air 2 was talked about for 80 or 90% of the time, and then the iPad Mini 3 was sort of like, oh, here's the iPad Mini 3, and it was just, the 10 or 20% time left over. I think because of the 5.5-inch iPhone 6 Plus, that it's inevitable that they're kind of conspiring on one another. When you look at the fact that the iPad Mini is about 7.9 inches, and then the the iPhone 6 Plus is 5.5. Is that a big enough difference, or will the iPhone 6 Plus just cannibalize the iPad Mini? I'll tell you what, as somebody who has all of them, I don't have the 6 Plus, but I do have the 6. And again, I got the 6 because I felt the 5.5 might be too much for me. I don't know that through time that's going to end up being a big deal. I do think this is a perfect size, though, this 6, this 4.7 inch. It feels right. I can have it in one hand. I can hit everything I need to on the screen. I can do everything I need to do. I don't feel like it's overboard on the size. But again, a lot of people say with this phone, it's weird when you put the 5.5 up to your ear. It looks ridiculous. But then I was really thinking, how many times are you really putting your phone up to your ear if you think about it? I mean, the majority of my phone stuff is doing things like surfing the web, checking Facebook, doing quick check things, Googling, using the Google app, using the browser, using music, audio stuff, podcasts, all that. And then if I talk on the phone, very often it's in Bluetooth in my car, or I have my headphones on and I use the earbud to talk. So you use video conferencing, all that. How often are we really putting our phone to our ear? So I think you have to almost assess whether you are a ear-to-phone person as much as we worried about it. I don't know about the putting it in your pocket thing. I've had no problem with the pocket, unless I'm wearing a tighter jean, which I don't wear as much. But I haven't had a major deal with that. But I do carry it around a lot, and then you just kind of keep it. But it is good. But you do think maybe that the iPad Mini will get pushed out of the market by the 5.5. I sort of went with the 4.7 as well for that, knowing I had a Mini, knowing I had an Air, to not come to terms with that decision right now, whether it makes one kind of obsolete or unnecessary. But I will tell you, I love my iPad Mini. I kind of break down by using my iPad Air when I'm home in the morning. I like to read my magazines and my papers and my Yahoo News Digest. I really like that. Just came to the, as we talked about in a podcast a couple ago, that came to the App Store for iPad a couple months ago. Love reading all that. And then I actually am somebody who has learned to read while running on an iPad. Weird. While running on a treadmill. And I find that the iPad is great for that because you just kind of set it up there right on your display, and then you go to what you're going to read, And if you're in like the New York Times app, they give you the opportunity to either make your content scrollable, so you can just flick up on the screen all the way, or paginated. Paginated is much better for running because you just have to press one thing and it moves to the next screen. Some magazines like the New Yorker, which I read, is tough when you're running because you have to like kind of scroll it and then read and then scroll it, and then sometimes when you're running and scrolling it gets very unwieldy, and sometimes it'll move past where you were scrolling. You got to figure out where you are. That can be tough. So the pagination is much better for running, but I do like to run while I'm reading. And the good thing with the iPad, you make that text as big as possible. Much easier to run with big text. And I kind of learned that on the Kindle from years ago, because the Kindle used to be my reading device until the iPad came out. Now the Kindle is just my book reading device. But I do like to use that, and then I take my iPad mini with me to work through the day. I got that all covered leather case, which feels a little better to be traveling with. The back of the iPad is not exposed, even though I did use that one for a while until I got the mini going out, and I still will bring it in sometimes. But I bring that to work and bring that out. So anything I do at work, maybe I'll have a video on in the background, like a YouTube or a Mike Francesa on Fox Sports Go. I'll have that on, and I'll listen to podcasts on my iPad, on my iPhone with the Overcast app. But it really does break down that way. And I'll tell you, the iPad Mini really is a perfect device. I don't think I would want a phone that big, but I don't know where the line is where it becomes too much for a phone but too little for a tablet. I wonder if it's at this new Google Nexus phone, which is 6 inches. Maybe that is the fine line. You know, when you look at that weird animal, a minx, and it's like half of it looks like a lion and then half of it has a cat head. Like, is that going to be that weird line where one moves over too much and it looks like a lion, one moves too little, it looks like a cat? And does it end up being worse than the sum of those ideals? It's a very interesting point, but that Nexus 6, that Google Nexus 6 at 6 inches, maybe that is the dividing line. A lot of these Samsung, the Notes, the phones like that, the bigger ones are like 5.7, 5.8. So maybe 6 is that dividing line. But the iPad Mini I really do like and love it. Another good thing with the iPad is what they've carried over, which we saw with the new phones. The storage has been upped. The base level iPad Air 2 is still $499. But for $599, $499 at 16 gigs, but for $599, we're to 32 gigs of storage. Now you're at 64 gigs of storage. I don't see any reason why anyone would get the $499. You get that $599 and you're in good shape. The only thing I could think of is, as I brought up, I still have to bring this Cash for Clunkers idea up. I still haven't finished that. Last year when I got my iPad, I had the iPad 3rd generation, and I was totally fine with it. I wasn't going to get the Air. Convinced myself I'd be good with it. But then what they do, you'll see it move around to all the different stores, whether it's Staples, Target, Best Buy, using something on Gazelle, the online version of turning in old iPads. Speaking of, Gazelle actually right now has a deal where if you you sell your old iPad, they'll give you a $20 promotional addition to the price that you're offered for that iPad. But last year I saw that Target would right off the bat give you $200 for your old iPad, and then you could get a 16 gig iPad Air for $20 less than it was retailing for. So $479, you take the 200, then it was $279, and at that deal I said to myself, oh, I'm going to jump in. That's worth it. If you're paying $279 for a 16 gig tablet, on top of it, if you moved up to the 32 gig at the time, they weren't giving that same $20 off of the retail. So that might be where you jump in that. But I don't see any reason for the space storage here. And then when you move to $699, this is again Wi-Fi only. It's 128 gigs. So it used to be 16, 32, 64. Now it's 16, 64, 128. Space has come down, and it's a real good thing to kind of jump into. And I would probably opt for that second level, the 64 gig. With my phone, I jumped into this Verizon Edge plan, which will allow me to get a phone every year. And basically, you're only paying more in your second year. I don't know, you know how it works out. You always have to be skeptical when something looks like you're going to be paying the same and you're getting something brand new. You always have to see where, how the wash turns out here. Let's make sense about this. But this plan is basically paying what we were paying, my wife and I. She's a teacher, so we get a discount, which is cool. She didn't get the plan. I got the plan. So with me getting the plan, we basically pay the same. She keeps her phone. She's not as big of of a tech crazed person like I am. But it allows you to jump in and do it. But at the time when I was making this impulse decision, the only phones they had at the Verizon store were 128 gig versions of the iPhone 6, not the 6 Plus. And I said, well, I'll get it, because the price per month difference between the 64 gig and the 128 gig was like $3 or $4, whatever. So I'm trying to download every single thing I have onto my phone to make it justify. And I think even doing that, I'm only at like 25 gigs now. That might even be more. But space has come up. The iPad Mini 3, same level, is between $399 and $599 based on the 16 gig, 64, 128 gig. Now the iPad Mini Retina that I have has come down to $299, and the original Mini is now $249. So Apple is trying to make sure that they have a tablet available in every price point where other tablets are. So the $249 kind of jives well with the Nexus 7 tablet that I have from Google, which again, a good purchase to make, because I was really on the cusp of jumping to Android, and I probably could have jumped to Android with this new Edge plan I'm on, because I could have had that for 12 months and then jump back to iPhone, to experience it. But I've got to experience it on this Nexus tablet, and I do like it. There's certain things that are cool, like the widgets, even though there are widgets now in iOS 8. In the notification today screen, if you swipe down, you'll see widgets. So that is cool, the widgets there. On Android, you can have widgets actually in your home screen, the actual screen. You don't have to be in notifications. Yeah, it's cool, but I'll tell you what, it's not blowing my mind. The email app, not blowing my mind. Now I know a lot of other makers, whether it's HTC or Samsung, will have their own suite of products that go on top of the Android, and maybe some of those are better than the ones I have on the Nexus, because the Nexus is actually from what I read, an original kind of Google created software system. So Google creates these products. The newest one, as I said before, is the Nexus 6 and the Nexus 9, which is the tablet. And the new Nexus 9 tablet is made by HTC. The new Nexus 6 phone is made by Motorola. From when Google had gone in with Motorola, I guess these are some of the products, even though I think they broke apart or they sold it already. But Google makes these phones with the newest version of the Android operating system, and they make it completely in the image that they want the software to be used. Now, it's obviously open source software, so they give it out freely, and then these other makers, whether it's HTC again, or whether it's Samsung or LG, or even Amazon does it with their phones and their Kindle tablets. They make it what is called a forked version. So they go and they take the base software and then put their own overlay on top of it, their own experience on top of it or alongside of it. These Nexuses are the actual software as the way Google wants it to be used, or the perfect kind of representation of how it should be used, and the interactions and notifications and the apps and how it looks and all that. So I have the original version of that, but having the Nexus 7 has shown me that very cool, but I really am an iOS person. I do enjoy it, and by getting that tablet at a very modest cost, I actually got it kind of cheap, and then I used Amazon Prime to ship it for free, and then like American Express points to buy it. So that was cool. It's neat, but not dying to jump in. Now, again, as I said, the other tablet makers, iOS, Apple really owns the tablet market. So people, the outside developers, the ones who bring the inspiration to the platform, are willing to make apps on it and make the best version of apps. I kind of get the feeling when I'm on the Google tablet that a lot of the apps are maybe the phone ones that are just made bigger, like when you have an old app, or when you have a phone app on even the iPad and you hit ×2, and it just expands the same pixelated version of the phone one and spreads it out. I kind of get the feeling that people aren't envisioning themselves on the software. It was neat to have the Google services, the Gmail embedded, the Google Now, the Maps, all that, the Chrome. Yeah, that was cool, but it's not 1,000 times more integrated than you can have it already on the iPhone. Yes, there are certain things on the iPhone, if you have Chrome or if you have Maps, where You can't tell the system to make your default experience be the Google experience. It'll open Safari for internet browser. It'll open up the maps for destination information and things like that. But it's not that different. The Google Now you can still hit on your phone and talk to see the experience there when you're on your iOS. The Google Now is great. You can still open Gmail on your phone. You can still open Maps on your phone, and it's a great hardware. So I don't get that feeling. I feel a little cheap with the tablet. HTC is a better, more Apple-like hardware, as you see out there. It really is. It's got real heft to it, not heaviness, but heft, like real solid kind of brick type thing, real good thing. So maybe the new tablet having that is good, but I'm not dying to have Android at this point. So I got the experience, not dying to have it. And I'll tell you what, with the changeover to iOS 8 and with the newer, bigger phones, I have the iPhone 6 again, I noticed that a lot of outside apps were not updating to the experience. And I've been on Google Chrome as my internet browser on all iDevices for maybe a year or 2 years at this point. And I made a decision. Chrome had not updated their app to take advantage of the space and the pixels and all that stuff. And you do notice it. It kind of looks like when you're on a tablet and you see the smaller phone representation on it. It doesn't look as good. It's not as sharp. It's not as resolution or retina display or anything like that. And you kind of want to have the experience. So I actually saw one time a couple weeks ago that it said Google Chrome is updating for the iPhone 6 now in iOS 8. And I went, oh, okay. And I downloaded it, and it was immensely better. And then I had that weird thought where whenever somebody wants to show you how Retina display works on an iDevice, they'll go into a browser or they'll go into an app and they'll actually pinch. It's like a pinch test. They'll pinch out until you can see like into the actual pixels of words. So you might see the letter A, and when you pinch enough, all you see is the color of the font of the letter, and it's taken up everything. If you're in Safari, if you're in an Apple created app, you'll see like the pixelation go on for forever, and you can just keep going, and no matter how far you stretch, it's like perfect. It's a perfect, almost Retina HD level representation of that font. And I noticed when I was in Chrome, even with the update, that you pinch, and it pinches pretty far, but it does start to pixelate at the high ends. And again, how often are you pinching like that? But it made me realize, I said, Safari's really come a long way, and maybe it was someone like Chrome coming in there and showing some features that users want, whether it's tabs or the way search interacts. And I think Safari has learned from that, and they've brought that to their native device. And a couple weeks ago, I turned back over to Safari, and I've been there ever since. And I've read some things as well where folks are kind of saying that I'm moving back from Google. I'm not as enamored by everything they're doing, and it's true. I mean, I still love the maps. I still love the Google Music, but I went back to the Safari browser on my iDevices. It's made by the company who makes the hardware and software, and it's pretty freaking good. It's much better than it was. It has the tabs, it has the share features, and it has that awesome feature where when you're in a when you're in a news story, for instance, oops, apps are opening up all over the place. When you're in a news story, for instance, it's like a read function at the top left of the browser where you would input the URL, and it does basically what Instapaper or Pocket does to articles. It strips all the garbage out and gives you a perfect kind of representation of just the content and the text and the images and things like that. So it's a really good browser, and I turned back over. So it's funny the way things can happen like that. Things can really turn. I mean, 6-7 months ago, I was ready to jump over to Android completely, and now I'm totally convinced to stay in iOS. Now iOS could have a problem, and the iPhone, something could go wrong. A real thing like Bengate could happen where all of a sudden the product is not as great as it was, or you get too far away from the the visionary kind of status of the product from Steve Jobs' days, and it gets to a point where they're not creating great things, but they still are. And at the end of their event today, they really did a good job of kind of showing that they're really owning every place where you interact with digital. From the watch, which is coming out, which again, I don't know that I'm in love with the watch, but the watch to all the phones, to tablets, to most beautiful computers you've ever seen. The new iMac, which I've never been a PC computer Apple person, and I think that's because the premium, which I'm willing to pay on mobile devices, because even at a premium on mobile devices, it's still in the hundreds of dollars, it's not in the thousands. The iMacs are in the thousands, and I think unless a business is going to pay for me to have that, I can't justify paying for it. I'm not in a form of work where I'm doing things with publishing and artistic endeavors and all that, which is, I think, the only way you can kind of convince someone to buy it for you. Does look beautiful. It's got something called 5K. The screen is 5K. We've heard of 4K, but 5K is out there. So it's a completely new experience. 5120 by 2880 pixels. I mean, that's jaw-dropping. But again, it's upwards of like $2,500. Other things, Apple Pay is coming out finally Monday, October 20th. So that'll be neat. I've been someone who has not been enamored by Apple Pay. I don't think it changes the paradigm of payment. I think it just moves the way we pay into your phone. Maybe we'll find, as I said with iTouch, where it's become indispensable. Maybe I'll find that it becomes indispensable because it takes something I already was doing and makes it that much easier. Maybe if it saves you 1 or 2 seconds every payment over a year, that ends up being like 3 days. People say stuff like that. Maybe it makes this seamless, frictionless payment aspects, gives you more time in life. Fine, so be it. Maybe there's innovations that happen upon Apple Pay that I'm not thinking of. Some kind of Bitcoin type protocol almost. I wanted Apple to create their own currency. Again, too much thinking. Apple Watch is coming out early 2015. They announced something called WatchKit. It is something that will allow third-party developers to create atop the watch platform. HealthKit, they kind of brought up. HealthKit has laid dormant for me. I can't figure out what works with it. It just stays empty. It seems like I have to volunteer all the info into it. I think it's probably going to die on the vine. It doesn't seem like HealthKit's going to work. Who knows about HomeKit? Apple did not bring out a new Apple TV device, which is kind of a surprise, but maybe that's big enough thing where they have a bigger announcement where they can announce everything around it and it's a whole new ecosystem or something. They were in talks in the last handful of years to basically create a cable box that you could plug your existing cable into, but it's an Apple experience. Nothing's really come of that. I think probably the cable companies are not as enamored with doing that anymore because they see how Apple has taken over the music industry and the traditional powers of that industry have kind of been laid low, except if you're Beats executives because they went and bought you for $3.2 billion. That did pretty well, but that's kind of that's been for naught. That would be a great experience. Imagine having an Apple TV-like experience to display your cable feed. Then all of a sudden you might not feel so bad about paying for cable if you're getting something that really re-envisions that feed as if it's almost like an RSS creating a Flipboard type experience, the way content is fed into Flipboard and then it creates this. Imagine if almost you imagine that cable feed being like an RSS feed that Apple enlivens across the screen. That would be cool. And the big issue is that the cable companies might have something bigger on their hands because as we talk about TV, great information. HBO Go is going to become a standalone product in the US in 2015. And I was thinking today, I said, oh wow, someone brought up something about 2015. And I was like, oh man, HBO Go had announced they're going to come up with something in 2015. That's going to be amazing at that time in the future. And I said, wait a second, 2015 is in 2 months. So HBO Go could be here before you know it. And I'll tell you, I don't know about you, I'm probably sure about you do this. HBO Go to me is not something that's the only way I interact with HBO. I never go to the HBO channel. For whatever reason, on my cable, Service Electric up in northern New Jersey, old cable company which never expanded, so that could be part of the problem. I can't actually DVR HBO. I can only watch it live. So I really only go to HBO Go. That's the only way I watch HBO. And I'll AirPlay it, or I'll use obviously HBO Go. The app came to Apple TV within the last half year or so. So that was a big thing. And Showtime Anytime actually came to HBO Go too. So that was really cool. So they're building up, and maybe they're getting to this point where Apple TV, without having to kind of contract with the cable companies, that they're sort of bringing the world in there. And all of a sudden, if an HBO Go becomes a standalone, which they announced again, they will, all of a sudden you are in a place where you don't need the cable companies anymore. You got the Netflix on there, you got the HBO Go, you got the Showtime Anytime. Now, Showtime Anytime, who knows, maybe they'll go standalone. I think CBS, which owns Showtime, they announced pretty much on the same day, if not today, a day later, that they're having their own standalone product, where for $6 a month you can get an on-demand digital version of CBS with all their back catalog of shows. No football, but there is some live TV, especially in the New York market, maybe LA market, and one other. You have live television capabilities through the app, but no football, which is a big thing. Sports is still the last kind of thing holding together the cable TV conglomerate. It's the only live event thing that people still want to watch in many ways. So CBS broke apart, which means, not broke apart, but they're offering this cord cutter option, $6 a month. Who knows, maybe that's a good fee. The HBO Go thing, they haven't announced how much it's going to be. That'll be a big key, because I pay about $16 a month on top of my cable, because obviously you can only get HBO through cable or by stealing the login from a friend or a brother or whoever. There's no cap on how many people can sign into HBO Go, which was a joke last year actually. But you can only get it through authentication with a cable provider. So I buy HBO and then I use the HBO Go through that. Somehow Service Electric has HBO Go, which was a big moment. I don't mind paying for the content, but I feel really inefficient about paying over the top of cable in order to get this digital service. So for $16 a month through cable, who knows, if they charge it for 10 or 12 through the cord cutter option, I would probably jump there anyway, because I like the efficiency of buying it outright from there. But there's a lot of people bringing up some valid concerns, which all of a sudden HBO becomes a standalone internet service. How about the fact that there's 10 or 15 million people who just buy that and are just accessing HBO through that? Does their network need to expand to become better? Do they have problems? I mean, you remember, was it Game of Thrones or True Detective, where the finale episode, it brought the network down and people couldn't actually watch it in real time? So there are concerns when you move all digital. There's going to be that many more people hitting your servers and using up your bandwidth, and you got to be prepared for that. Also, how will they do now with net neutrality issues? If they're a standalone service, do the broadband providers, who actually, I think Time Warner actually owns HBO, so maybe if Time Warner is the internet provider, they provide a fast lane to HBO to the detriment of Netflix, and Netflix has to pay it, or does HBO have to start paying that, and then all of a sudden the costs of your subscription go up? So there will be a lot of questions with that, and it's something we'll have to pay attention to. But like I said, CBS is doing it, now HBO's doing it, now maybe CBS owns a Showtime, maybe Showtime does it, and all of a sudden you're in a thing where you can build a pretty good bundle of television content that you like outside of the cable paradigm. That is a big thing. But if you do notice, look at the way the money adds up. How about if HBO were $12, then you want to buy $, then what if Showtime is $10? Like, what if they're not that far off from the price you pay for cable? And then all of a sudden, you're upwards of $50 a month, and you're like, well, I'm already, 60% or 50% of the way there towards what my cable bill would be. And then on cable, I'm getting 100 more channels on top of it. So that might kind of be where the rubber hits the highway there, and you have to make a real decision. The thing I really want, I want an Apple TV-like experience, as I brought up before. And then I want the ability to purchase packages of television. I want a $25 package, or I want to tell myself I'll pay $50. And based on all the channels, you add up to that package. So again, HBO is $12, CBS is $6. Now you're at $18, and then let's say let's say FX or AMC is $6. Now you're at $24. So if you have a $25 package, you have to do everything within $25 based on those channels. Now, in my opinion, from month to month, you should be able to change the channels you want. So maybe you can binge a show for a month, and then the next month you let your $7 slot go towards FX, and you leave AMC. But then the next month you can come back there. I think it'll play more towards the way we binge watch. We like to watch things, and we like to get into a show regardless of the network and kind of ride it through and watch it all. That to me is a real kind of dynamic and innovative platform. And then using that Apple TV, or using that Chromecast, or that Roku, or those apps on your tablets or your phones. That to me is cool. And then somehow getting sports into the mix is a big key, because again, that's the only reason I keep cable. I keep it so that I have sports, and I keep it so that my wife has something to watch when she's home alone, because that was one of the big things. We tried to break off of the cord. We tried to cord cut when we moved into our house almost 4 years ago. So we went with Roku, and she was home one day, home from school. She's a teacher, and she was like, I don't know what to do, because it's on-demand television. You need to know where to go, and you need to know what you want to watch. There's not really passive television. It's all kind of active viewing on demand, and so that was a big thing. But look, cable has the sports. It's got the ESPN, which again, all 100 households who have cable in America are paying for ESPN, even though about 20 million people actually watch it, if that. And they're paying a $5 fee, every single one of those houses. So you're looking at, what's that, $500 million every month? $500 million a month for ESPN. Look at what they're getting away with. So they don't want this whole cable thing decoupling. They certainly don't. But maybe they're in a spot where somebody would pay $10 a month to have ESPN. So those 20 million people can pay $10, and maybe it starts to offset some things and do some better stuff. Maybe there's packages that you got to pay, but you can buy sports online. You can buy packages, MLB Extra Innings, NFL League Pass. NFL League Pass does have the option. This year they have the streaming only option. For some reason I could not get it because you have to be eligible for some reason. I don't know how that works, but hockey has it, soccer, all that. But the problem is the exclusive rights. You cannot watch live games through the internet within a 75-mile radius. If you're in the zone of a 75-mile radius of a team, you can't watch that team's games live. So so you can buy a package, and I can watch the Oakland A's, all the games I want live, or I can watch the Philadelphia Phillies or the Marlins. I can watch those until my heart's content. But I can't watch the Mets, which are my team, or we can't watch the Yankees, which is my wife's and mother-in-law's team. That's kind of ridiculous. So we need to break down those exclusivity rights. We need to kind of take away some of these barriers which are keeping cable alive. And I think that the good content providers, the ones who are making the good content, will be in a place where they will make money in droves. They'll do completely fine. I can't imagine how many people will sign up for HBO. The site that said, there was a site called HBO Take My Money or something like that. And it was basically people petitioning HBO to make a standalone HBO Go app, and that they would pay an average of $12. Here's our money. Look at how many people are pirating HBO shows. Look at how many people are pirating Breaking Bad. If you give an outlet to pay a fair price for it, you'll make up all that money where people were stealing it before, and you'll have a better kind of situation with that. So it will be something that is very worth watching. It's decoupling. 2014 is the year where everything seems to be coming apart, where the old ways of doing things and the new ways of doing things it's kind of the synapse between those. Much is happening this year, whether you're looking at political, geopolitical, content, net neutrality, all this stuff is breaking open, and it's getting to a place where it's exciting. And I think we'll end up in a place where we're more future thinking, forward looking, and something that works out for a lot of people. So very interesting to watch. We'll see how the decoupling continues, and we'll see how the new Apple stuff does. I don't think I'm going to be getting the new one, but let's see if Target comes out with a deal. Let's see if someone comes out with a deal that makes it too good for me to pass up, because I'm very impulsive with purchases. The original iPad came out. I said, I don't want that. It's just a big iPhone. Who wants that? And the promise caught me, and I was an impulse buy, and I went and bought it, and I shamefully told my wife, and she laughed at me. So we'll see if that happens. I'm sure maybe with one of the devices, maybe whether it's the Mini or the Air, although it does seem like the thing to do is to turn in the Air and get the Air 2, not necessarily the Mini. The jump up in quality and processing and speed doesn't seem to be that stark in the Mini. Again, probably because the 5.5-inch phone is starting to cannibalize that, but it does have touch, and you do get very used to this touch, and I do miss it when I open up my iPad. So we shall see. Have fun. I had fun. This was the Mix Minus podcast with Matt McQueenie. Thank you all. We'll look out for you next time.